I'm Nathan. It's difficult to say when this journey began, but I've always wanted to fly. Over the years, ever so often I'd call a general aviation flight school and do the math and see if our budget would support flight training, and it never really did. Then in August of 2017, I was watching YouTube, and a recommended video showed up about a 23-year-old guy named Tucker Gott from New Jersey who was into paramotoring. There wasn't anything in front of him but his feet in the sky. I'd seen paramotors before, but it was always like in the context of a TV show where some daredevil was doing some kind of extreme flying or something like that. But there was something about the Tucker videos that made it seem a lot more mainstream, like it was something like I could actually do. I would watch this guy flying around like thousands of feet in the air and seeing these incredible views, and I'd watch him fly between hay bales or fly down a road bed just inches off the ground and then lay on the throttle and climb over a row of trees. And I don't know, his videos connected me with something deeper that just, more than just becoming a general aviation pilot. I wanted to fly. I mean, the airplane, the instruments, the radio, they were all kind of a means to an end, and the end result really wasn't the kind of flying I was thinking of when I was 8 years old. I mean, airplanes came with a lot of baggage and a lot of rules, and an airplane meant looking at the world through a cockpit and only being able to fly just so low. Airplanes also meant a whole lot of expense and hassle, and you had to pay to store an airplane somewhere in a hangar, and they had a lot of maintenance, and you were always tethered to an airport in one way or another. But, Tucker stored his powered paraglider in his garage, and he took it off at a local soccer field, and he landed once at a local McDonald's. And, I mean, what 8-year-old kid doesn't dream about going outside and just taking off and flying down to McDonald's? I also grew up playing in the woods of Arkansas and driving a little Honda 73-wheeler everywhere. I love exploring, and here was a totally new way to explore the world from an entirely new perspective. I needed to do this. I was 40 years old at the time and healthy, and I looked at the expense, and it was more affordable than I thought it would be. So no regrets. Live life to the fullest. In his videos, Tucker recommended a place for training called Aviator Paramotor in the Orlando, Florida area. So I started there. But they were booked up for like 18 months, but they told me they had these alliance schools that taught their same syllabus in the same way that they did in Florida. One school that they recommended was Midwest Powered Paragliding in Franklin, Indiana. I called Midwest PPG and spoke with a lady named JC, and I honestly felt a little self-conscious about it all because, man, I'm a 40-year-old pursuing a dream that you've had since you were a kid, and it kind of made me feel a little awkward about the whole thing. But JC was incredibly helpful and welcoming, and I knew that was going to be the right place for me to train. The earliest class that they had available at the time was April the 28th of 2018, and that was still like 8 months away, and it felt like a long time to wait. But class was also going to be about 10 days long, and it was going to be difficult for me to leave my business for that amount of time, but I wanted it bad enough, so I signed up. And there wasn't a whole lot for me to do while I waited for class. I studied the FAR Part 103, which are the rules that cover powered paragliding flying, and I learned a little bit about reading aviation charts and understanding airspace. I figured that stuff would be helpful to know one way or the other, and it wouldn't teach me any bad habits along the way as well. I asked JC on the phone if I should have my own gear before class, and she told me not to get any gear beforehand, that I'd have a chance to fly a lot of different paramotors and wings, and that the training would be, part of that would be learning what equipment would work best for me, and I'm really glad that I took that advice. Before long, it was April the 27th, and I left for training. I started the morning of Saturday, April the 28th, meeting the instructors, Dave and Matt, and my fellow students, Eric and Mason, and Greg and Carlo and David. We all went around the table and talked about why we wanted to do this, and we all had a really similar pull kind of into the sport. The first 2.5 days we spent learning about the equipment, ground handling or kiting the wing, learning to wear the paramotor, learning to control the throttle, and practicing our first flight in a big swing set-like frame that they call the simulator. And by the end of the day, we were all ready to fly for our first time. By the end of our third day, we were all ready to fly for the first time. Flying in the air by ourselves. And every one of us were nervous, but we knew that we would be on the radio with our instructors, and it was time for that moment of truth.
Good job. What'd you think?
That was awesome.
Cool.
Too easy, right?
Yeah.
Nothing at all to worry about, right?
No, we got it.
Was that a lot of fun?
Yeah.
Good.
A lot of fun.
Good. You did excellent.
Thank you, man.
Good job, dude.
Thanks.
How was it?
Appreciate it. It's crazy. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
You did it. You don't have to sleep on it now.
I just flew this paramotor.
It was indescribable. There was so much happening at once. It was difficult for me to keep it clear in my head. I just remember this rush of activity and commands in my headset, and the next thing I knew, I was like 40 feet off the ground and climbing away and thinking, oh wow, I'm actually flying. I felt such a sense of accomplishment and exhilaration and relief. I was also 100% invested in my classmates' success there, and I was so happy for each one of them, and I think that's just part of the sport. We do it mostly alone, and it's incredible. But when you experience something incredible, you want to share it with others really, really badly. And that's why I think so many of us make videos. We kept flying and kiting and doing classes over the next 6 days. By Sunday, May the 6th, I'd completed 25 flights, and I'd earned what's called a PPG-2 rating with the United States Powered Paragliding Association. That's not a required rating, but the USPPA is a good organization. It has a seat at the table with the FAA. They're good advocates for the sport, and it was important for me to earn that. Coming back to Arkansas was hard. I didn't have my own gear on order, and without gear, I wasn't going to be doing any flying anytime soon. And a paramotor and a wing is definitely the cheapest form of aviation, but I had to make sure that spending the money on gear was something that was going to be that my family could afford to do. And I ended up selling my motorcycle, and I sold a few guns and a scope that I had to help kind of fund the purchase. But, 15 days after I got back from training, I ordered equipment. And I then spent the time waiting on the gear to come in to scope out places to fly here in Arkansas and getting permission to fly out of a couple of places near my house. And I'm just really incredibly thankful to everyone that opened up their land to allow me to fly. You guys are a blessing to me, and I really, really appreciate you, and I want you to know that. I also met a group of guys in the Little Rock area that fly paramotors and paragliders, and we all got together for dinner one night and made a lot of new friends, and one friend in particular named Pat that lives just a couple of miles from my house that actually flies, and he flies the same motor as I do and the same wing that I trained on in school. And while I waited for my gear to come in, Pat loaned me a spare wing that he had, which was an old Acaro Instinct, and he let me practice kiting with that. And it's old and it's heavy and it's a difficult wing to kite, but I was just so grateful that he loaned it to me and helped me keep my skills sharp. And a month to the day from ordering my wing, it came in, and 2 days later my motor arrived. And here's me unpacking the wing. It's an Ozone Roadster 2. It's a 26-meter wing, and I had a video unboxing the motor, but it got deleted. But the motor is an Air Conception Nitro 200 with their new titanium V2 race frame. My wife Angie helped me work on the Nitro and get it ready to fly, and by June the 25th, everything was set for me to fly for the first time at home. Matt, one of my instructors at Midwest PPG, told us that the first flight at home would be really nerve-wracking, like our first flight all over again, and he was right. It'd been a month and a half since I'd flown last, and I was nervous about it. I set up in a grass airfield near my house, and I talked myself through the things that I learned in training and launched. And other than the ride being a little bumpy, it went off without a hitch, and it was so good to be back in the air, and I couldn't believe that I was actually flying over the place where I live. It was the first time my wife had ever seen me fly too in person, and it was fun to get to share that with her. My second flight was at a sod field in Scott, Arkansas, and it was just a quick flight because the winds were pretty high. And I circled around, and I came back in for a landing. My landing didn't get captured on video. My 12-year-old son was recording it at the time, but it went down to one knee, and it was a little sketchy, but overall not too bad. Nothing got bumped up or messed up or anything, so that was good. My mom and kids were there and got to see me fly and see that I can actually do this now, which is kind of cool. My third flight in Arkansas was back at the grass strip near my house, and winds were also a problem on this flight, but other than being a little bumpy, it was fine. I mean, there's ridges to the south, and when the winds are blowing from that direction, they create a lot of turbulence, and it was just a little bit bumpy, but not the end of the world. My fourth flight back here in Arkansas was in the Scott, Arkansas area, in the morning of July the 2nd, and conditions were absolutely perfect. And I had one of the best flights I've ever had, and I flew to a lake called Old River Lake and watched boats go up and down the lake. And on my way back to the launch site, I picked up a pickup truck stopped, and a guy got out of his truck and was waving at me, and I flew past a little swampy patch of forest and watched the deer run through a field near like this irrigation system, and flew low over the fields and then landed. It was just a really amazing flight. My fifth flight, and the last one that I've made as of this video, was the morning of July the 3rd from a field near my house. And other than one blown forward launch, which I just reset and did again, the flight started out nearly perfect. The winds were low, and I flew over my house and a little ridge that surrounds my house, and I flew nearby to a nearby neighborhood where my wife and I like to walk sometimes in the evenings, and just flew around my neighborhood and had a great time. I mean, towards the end of the flight, the winds picked up a little and got a little bumpy, but not a big deal. It was a good flight. So here I am on July the 6th. I turned 41 today, and in the last year, I've realized a dream that I have a new thing that I do now. And when the weather's right, I can put on a backpack and pull a wing up overhead and go explore. The most common reaction I get from people is that they think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy, and I'm not an adrenaline junkie or anything like that. I don't have a death wish, and I get as afraid of heights as anyone else when standing on the edge of a cliff with no safety gear on. But I love life, and God created me a certain way, and He built me to have this interest. And if I ignore that, I'm afraid I'm going to be on my deathbed one day with regrets. And I still have an interest in general aviation and gadgets and airplanes, and maybe one day I'll have the opportunity to do that. But if I don't, I'll be fine with that. I can fly. Life is short, and I'm going to do everything I can to experience the things that matter to me, and I hope you get to do the things that matter to you. I don't know what these videos will become. I think for now, I just want to share my experiences with you, and I'm up there, and I think about how I wish I could bring everyone with me, and so I'm going to try to bring you along as best I can.